This is northern Kenya, an area that has become well known the world over through the images of the wildlife that live here. Yet much less known are the daunting challenges that face this region. Problems of diminishing wildlife, overused grasslands, frequent drought, and increasing levels of poverty. The Maasai people have lived here for thousands of years. They are pastoralists, meaning they rely on the land to raise their cattle, moving their herds from place to place to find grass for grazing. Yet in recent years, dwindling grazing lands and the increasing population of the Maasai communities, as well as the increasing numbers of livestock they own, have combined to exact a terrible toll on both the people, the land, and the wildlife.
Livestock is causing enormous damage to livelihoods. Why? Because since Kenya got independence, the communities, the pastoralist community in the north, their numbers are increasing every day. And every pastoralist born must buy livestock. And the livestock numbers have grown so big, but the amount of land is not increasing. With the same piece of land. And I think strategies that will sustainably manage the rangelands and sustain livestock is so important.
The lifestyle of the pastoral people with whom we're working, it's all based obviously on livestock, cattle and sheep and goats. It's based on an open access system, so a given piece of land is available to anybody. Although there is an ownership of that land in terms of a group ranch. The pastoral approach is that if it rains, you can go there. If your land is dry, you can go to somebody else's land. And the impact of this means that there's no planned land management, there's no planned livestock ownership in terms of marketing. It's just an opportunistic lifestyle.
Such intricate attachment, cultural attachment to livestock among the pastoralists. And the fact that if we want to think any other form of land use in northern Kenya, we must first of all focus on cattle as the core land use. Everything else fits within livestock. Now, we are also saying livestock is so significant, traditionally, culturally, but it doesn't necessarily propel better living. Why? The amount of attachment there is in livestock does not allow for sale. Traditionally, you don't sell wealth. You find more wealth. And livestock for the pastoralist is the wealth. You don't sell money. Traditionally, you look for more money. And that's the element that is so important, that many people don't understand.
The fact is that a lot of these people don't have any other concept of wealth save cattle. To them, cattle is wealth, and there's nothing which compares to cattle. So there's a whole cultural issue. The fact that these people have lived with cattle for many thousands of years is something which we probably don't understand. In their minds is something enormously complex. In a situation where you have overgrazing, where you have a more regular occurrence of natural calamity resulting in cattle deaths, and you have an increasing population superimposed upon all of that, you end up in a situation where A, people are getting poorer, and B, the opportunity for wildlife conservation simply doesn't exist anymore.
The challenges of northern Kenya are particularly complex when it comes to wildlife preservation. Not long ago, the Grevy's zebra was once widespread in Kenya. Today, the country is home to only a couple of thousand of these animals. Indeed, half of all wildlife in Kenya has been lost to habitat destruction and poaching in the last 20 years. What is the solution to long-term conservation in northern Kenya?
If conservation in the longer term is going to succeed, and here we're talking about conservation of wildlife and conservation of wild areas, then it must provide for itself a reason to be, and it must provide for the people who live around it a reason to be. And without that, the chances are that it won't continue to exist. So it's kind of a new model, and it's investing in people more than it's necessarily investing in animals.
Today, programs are already underway in northern Kenya to both help the pastoral communities and preserve wildlife. These efforts include organizations such as the privately owned Lewa Wildlife Conservancy and the Northern Rangelands Trust, a community-based conservation organization.
The main theme for Northern Rangelands Trust is basically to apply an integrated approach to sustainable development for northern Kenya that would allow both coexistence of man, wildlife, livestock, and sustainable management of landscapes.
Part of the whole Rangelands Trust philosophy is actually to promote communities to manage the land that they own on a much more planned basis. So limit the amount of livestock, limit the time when it's grazed, access some parts of it at given times of year. Just a whole planned land management, the same as any normal ranch owner would be.
Any unrest that has happened in this area is over shortage of grazing and things like this. Now, if we can control that a bit better, show them better range management so that they have spare grazing in the dry times, yeah, we can eliminate this conflict.
To a large extent, potential solutions lie with the local communities. If conservation efforts in northern Kenya are to be successful, these efforts must consider the needs of the rural people as well as the needs of wildlife, and enhance the livelihoods of the people.
You know, what's really tickled my imagination over the last week is we've come from a non-academic background. We've seen the hardship and we've experienced the hardship, maybe not at the same level, but I've had my cattle die as a farmer. I've seen my economy drop. I didn't have a cent in the bank. I owed everything to the bank. And so I felt the pain that I'm seeing up here now. And we've promoted a sort of homegrown, not a solution, but a homegrown initiative to this, and it's working. It's starting to get world recognition. That's why Purdue are here. They see maybe we're somebody to work with. And now Purdue have brought in the Kenyan academic community. And so I see a sort of broadening network of knowledge, of access to new knowledge and new ideas that can build on what has really grown from pretty humble beginnings right here. That's what excites me.
To help meet this need, Purdue University, along with Egerton University in Kenya, has begun working with the Northern Rangelands Trust.
I was particularly fascinated by the interaction between wildlife and livestock at many different levels. At the level of diseases, where there are some diseases that affect both livestock and wildlife, at the rangeland management sorts of issues where both of them depend on the same food source, but particular as an economist on the economic interaction where there's the growth of ecotourism and those sorts of enterprises in the middle of an economy which for centuries has depended on livestock and livestock products, milk and meat and so on. And working that out and helping those people to adapt to the constraints of modern life and modern technology is an enormous opportunity. From the Purdue side, we bring really two things. One of them is technical expertise in the latest technology, the latest in science, and from the faculty side, long experience in various parts of Africa. From the Egerton side, we also bring a strong scientific background, but with that, a more intimate knowledge of the cultures, the languages, the local economies that is unlikely to be available to an American student, but from the side of the Kenyan faculty members, the Kenyan students, becomes part of what they bring to the table.
Without this partnership, without access to Purdue, without access to the kinds of knowledge that exist within that facility, and without the ability of the Globe Foundation to put all this together, basically this kind of project wouldn't go ahead at all. There's been numerous occasions in the past where NGOs have floated into northern Kenya, done projects for 2 years, looking at livestock, looking at exactly the same problems that we're looking at now, and floated away again 2 years later without ever really solving anything. The difference here is we're established organizations on the ground. We have a stake in what goes on here. We're living with the people who are affected. We're likely to be living with those people for the next 50, 60, 70 years. We're not someone who's going to float in and out for a couple of years. And as I said, to have that liaison and linkage now with people who can provide us with knowledge and assistance from a sort of academic and practical background, working with the pastoralists, using us as a conduit to gain entry into those communities, I think is a kind of a unique opportunity which probably doesn't exist very much.
Purdue University, and similarly with Edgerton University, understand that involvement in this kind of projects is important all across our areas of responsibility, so that professors who are involved in international projects, and so from the Purdue standpoint, faculty who come here who are involved in supervising students are better professors, they're better teachers, they have more concrete examples to offer to other students, not just the students who happen to be involved in the program. They are also better at doing their own research. Often they face similar problems in Indiana, and they can then look at a similar problem in a very different environment and gain new insights. On the engagement side, or extension to use the more traditional term, this is a way for university expertise to be applied in solving very real problems. So this has benefits for the university community at large, both Purdue and Edgerton, and by extension CARI, that extends far beyond the faculty and the students who are directly involved.
Today, there is a unique opportunity for a change in northern Kenya.
We now need some new ideas. We need some new thinking. We need a new economy. Our tourism it's not saturated, but the expertise is here to promote it and move that forward. But it's new thinking, new ideas, that are needed beyond that.
It's always been my dream. Although I'm a livestock man, Laikipia to me, 100 years ago, must have been run by pastoralists with their cattle and full of wildlife. It was teeming with wildlife, and those pastoralists lived with it. And I see no reason why we can't do that again.
This is a project that will help people, and I always think of people first. And it will help people, it will help them do a better job of managing their own environment, of improving their livelihoods and standards of living. Beyond that, though, it helps make the world a better place to live in, because we don't live in isolation. That, as we've seen over and over again in the last few years, that problems that we thought maybe were on the other side of the world somehow creep in and affect us at home where we live. And if we can make the world even just a little better place, where more people go to bed with food in their stomachs and have access to health care and clean water and so on, and have hope for the future, that makes the world a better place.
Solutions for northern Kenya and beyond rely on knowledge, expertise, and dedication.
I think integrated approach to sustainable support of livelihood, is the answer. But this cannot be done by one person. We need the expertise of the world.